Jubbs Body Flora, Life Colloidal Bioterrain, and a True Healing Therapeutic. Dr. David Jubb. Section 2, Lifefood Nutrient. The protein vitamin pyridoxine. Numbness and tingling of limb extremities. Lack of flexibility of fingers in the morning. Edema, water other than being cleared, and discomfort of the hands. Other than having good muscle tonus between the thumb and index finger. Discomfort in wrists, shoulder, elbow, and upon finger flexion due to carpal tunnel syndrome. Less than a proper energetic flow of hand or arm upon waking from sleep. Abnormal fluid and fatty substance leaked into the eyes near the retina. Less than being able to hold things, dropping things, with the hands and having other than excellent finger coordination. Chemical balance is assured in the blood and tissue of the body as there is enough B6. Healthy bone, nail, hair, skin, teeth, and connective tissue is promoted by an adequate B6 level in the blood plasma. B6 is required for proper use of B12. Antibody production and red blood cell production relies upon B6. Carbohydrate, protein, and fat metabolism requires B6 as an important catalyst. Body fluid is regulated more as the sodium-potassium pump is maintained by adequate levels of B6. B6 is produced by intestinal flora. B6 sufficiency occurs more as the body is rested from overeating dead protein. B6 is completely destroyed by heat. As one rests the body from ailment newly brought, on Lifefood, nutritionally fasting, and completing other cell rejuvenation cleansing, one brings in Lifefood rich in B6 that includes sprouted seed, avocado, bee pollen, bell pepper, blue-green algae, bran, cabbage, cantaloupe, green leaf, lemon, yeast, nut, orange, plum, blue-green algae, Irish moss. Pyridoxine, B6, and cell cleansing. One can do more than assist simply with symptom. A true healing therapeutic involves changing one's ways. Life only exists as a result of enzyme. Whole food vitamin mineral complex B6 is transformed into a coenzyme called pyridoxal phosphate. Enzymes and enzyme systems are only activated by this very important coenzyme. As all body activity requires vital enzyme action, enzymes can only function as pyridoxal phosphate is sufficient. Whole food vitamin mineral complex B6 is an important vitamin assisting in the control of all protein metabolism. Extensive clinical experience and literature analysis makes this nutrient a very important nutrient in Jubbs' cell rejuvenation program. In assisting with cardiovascular disease, sugar metabolism, joint discomfort, vital pregnancy, and rheumatic and soft tissue discomfort, B6 has widespread attention. Metabolism function can only occur with sufficient B6. B6 is very necessary to repair worn connective tissue. B6 is involved in the production of antibodies. B6 assists the body to clear excess cholesterol and metabolize fat. Synovia, cartilage, tendon, and nerve all have normal function only in the presence of sufficient B6. Elastic fibril, a small fiber in the aorta and artery, is preserved by an adequate level of pyridoxal phosphate. Excessive protein consumption other than allows sufficient levels of B6 to survive. B6 in a whole food vitamin complex is one nutrient the Jubbs recommend on a regular basis. B6, because of excessive protein consumption, more than 5% of the net weight of what's consumed, is a highly needed nutrient that assists in jump-starting the body again. On the Jubbs program, B6 is supplemented as the form it is found in nature. This is as a whole food vitamin mineral complex. Most pyridoxine, B6, on the market is simply synthesized from coal tar. That substance is an isolate and has an effect on the body more like a drug. Flexibility, muscle relaxation, and normal energetics in the limb provides sufficient levels of pyridoxine phosphate. B6 is the primary protein vitamin. B6 is produced within the intestinal tract as one has vital health, and pyridoxine is found in a variety of life food. Yet today, this may contribute only a marginal amount. Digestive insufficiency and inactivated and excreted B6 because of chemical and drug and enzyme system insufficiency. This is only a few of the factors leading to tissue insufficiency of B6. Metabolic transformation of toxic homocysteine requires B6, 12, folate, and magnesium. Homocysteine, implicated in arteriosclerotic plaque in the arteries, is produced from the unmetabolized amino acid methionine, primarily because of B6 insufficiency. Blood circulation and a vital cardiovascular system relies heavily on adequate levels of the coenzyme pyridoxine phosphate. There are some 188 body enzymes dependent on B6. 19 of some 20 odd amino acids require B6 for their synthesis. Normal hormone control requires B6, especially for an expectant mother. Hormone can have become bound to DNA abnormally. B6 blocks that abnormal binding. B6 is an important coenzyme in reducing edema in the extremities. B6 works with steroidal hormone. B6 has to be present in the body in adequate amounts for inflammatory and anti-inflammatory hormone-like agents of the immune system to work. A microscopic cell in the digestive system is specialized in its jobs producing various enzymes that turn fat, protein, and carbohydrate into a more reduced form. An enzyme is a proteinaceous molecule with a biotic force present that is highly heat sensitive. And enzymes are very sensitive to light and heat. Unbeknownst to most writers in this field, B6 is produced by intestinal flora in health. And providing one has other than overconsumed protein, most today in the USA overeat protein. Enough B6 is present to operate in the body. Remember that we've said that B6 is the protein vitamin, and also that it is a coenzyme that activates numerous enzymes and enzyme systems. Liver, pancreas, kidneys, and the brain tissue have some 118 enzymes that are assisted by B6. In digestion, for instance, one amino acid in food is tryptophan, and at least 3 enzymes are required for tryptophan to be taken apart. Only partially degraded, tryptophan can have become toxic. Tryptophan in its toxic form causes tissue morphological change to the pancreas. That condition is a contributing factor in other than maintaining vital pancreas function. It is the phosphate molecule joined to pyridoxine that is indispensable in protein metabolism. Chromium, magnesium, and zinc involve B6 in various ways. Once blood sugar is other than being regulated effectively, B6 insufficiency is associated with potassium complication as well. Excessive blood sugar binds with hemoglobin. With chromium present, insulin is able to organize cell membranes to draw in blood sugar. Magnesium is primarily involved in assisting the body with metabolic control. Zinc is a primary mineral assisting with enzyme function during digestion. B6 is an integral vitamin assisting in unique metabolic pathways involving chromium, magnesium, zinc, and potassium to function efficiently in the body. Catalytic function is so diverse that B6 is one of the most integral of all vitamin involved in amino acid and nitrogen biochemical transformation. Because of a diet of a bagel, burger, and cream cheese, that dead, denatured body ailment newly brought in was completely devoid of B6, heat unstable, and the protein consumed robbed B6 from the body in its metabolism. B6 is one primary nutrient assisting the body to maintain protein vitality. Current food choice has made this nutrient the most destructive deficiency disorder. Because this vitamin is so easily denatured and also from overconsumption of protein, B6 is a recommended supplement on Jubbs' cell rejuvenation program. Vitamins originated with work that said something was other than in the diet, that this was a substance needed from outside the body. If one apparently added a little vitamin C or B, then that healed symptoms of beriberi, scurvy, and pellagra. At the time it was probably thought that those diseases were transmissible diseases. Few have stopped to consider perhaps that it was because of the dead food continuously consumed as a drug that deficiency arose. Continuing to have consumed dead food and to have simply supplemented chemical isolates drawn from coal tar is other than a true healing therapeutic. B6 destroyed by cooking has resulted in serious cannibalism of the brain and gut, and brain function impairment has ensued. B6 has been shown to assist in eliminating convulsive seizure. Cardiovascular vitality requires B6, as already indicated, to assist the body in neutralizing plasma homocysteine. Homocysteine would otherwise have remained, and in a chain reaction caused lipoprotein A to have created occlusive vascular pathology, formation of arteriosclerotic plaque buildup in the arteries. Homocysteine has conclusively been shown to be a primary factor in myocardial infarction, heart attack. Reducing homocysteine and supplementing B6 is a way to reverse risk factors in cardiovascular compromised conditions. Retinopathy and diabetes mellitus, blindness, condition can be assisted by B6 supplementation preventing macular edema. B6 metabolism is correlated fairly highly with diabetes. Carpal tunnel syndrome is Also, another condition that is assisted greatly through supplementing B6. It is concluded here that B6 is an integral element required for vitality and life extension as much as air and water. Calcium and cell cleansing. Life owes its origin to water. The most abundant water is seawater. It's safe to assume for many reasons that life arose within the sea. Unicellular life colloid in the sea are the primitive ancestor of life on Earth. Element composing the body is similar as the constituents of seawater. Of all inorganic compound, calcium is the largest single tissue salt and is one of the most abundant mineral in the sea. The body on the land, finding itself without calcium of seawater, created its own internal sea to mimic its past primal ancestral environment. Blood is substitute seawater that cells in the body swim around in. Blood and seawater being alike, both have a similar mineral content and an abundance of calcium. Calcium content in the blood is kept quite constant. 99% of all calcium in the body is found in the bone. Calcium makes bone hard. With an adequate level of calcium, the heart continues to beat beautifully. Brain function, endocrine vitality, body cell movement, coagulation of the blood, and an enormous variety of other activities rely on body calcium level being vital. If blood calcium level remains constant, muscles remain relaxed, otherwise cramping and convulsion can have occurred. Calcium is necessary for feeling integrated and having consciousness flowing. Calcium that is too high or low in the blood plasma and muscle action of the body would remain other than vital. Minor change in the blood plasma of calcium concentration and life can have remained other than vigorous. Bone contains a 1,000 times more calcium than blood. Bone is the bank for the body's calcium reserve. Fish simply draw calcium required straight from the sea. Yet a land-dwelling animal breathing air is within a deficient calcium environment. The parathyroid has developed in a land-dwelling, air-breathing life form to manage living in calcium-deficient environment today than in the past. As calcium would have been required, the parathyroid excretes parathyroid hormone, one of 3 calcium-regulating hormones, and this would have drawn calcium out of the bone. Calcium drawn from the bone and other than replaced is called osteopenia and osteoporosis, little holes in the bone. Calcium in excess is other than readily returned to the bone. Excess calcium is also other than excreted through urine either. Because land dwellers breathing air live generally in a calcium deficient environment, yet life arose more from a calcium rich environment, the land dwelling air breathing body has done everything to conserve this precious and vital element. Calcium can have instead become deposited in soft tissue. Disease that was fatal is the result of too much calcium in the cell. Calcium should be in its protein colloidal chaperone state. Calcium entering the gut is technically still outside the body. The body would have absorbed generally only what's useful. Everything beyond what's useful is excreted through the intestinal tract. This homeostatic mechanism regulating gut absorption of calcium may other than work excellently. Acidity of the stomach and the neutralization of acid at the level of the pancreas and liver in the duodenum is a factor in mineral absorption. Excessive calcium absorbed by the body can initiate kidney excretion, yet this calcium filtration is what a kidney stone is about. As calcium is sufficient, calcium remains in the bone. Calcium, other than being able to remain in blood, can have become stored in soft tissue and cells. A less than excellent level of calcium in the body and muscle cell can other than contract. Too much calcium inside the cell and the cell can other than completely relax. Blood is a tissue, a liquid crystal tissue, that is colloidal in nature. Blood represents the vital environment of a cell. Concentration of ions on the inside of the cell in relationship to concentration on the outside are at the most 100-fold. 10 milligrams per deciliter of calcium, the most abundant element found in the plasma, is 10,000 times more concentrated on the outside than inside the cell. Calcium is nearly 100 times more concentrated outside the cell than any other tissue salt. Calcium, having other than been kept out from inside the cell, is other than youthful. As calcium is the same inside as outside, the body is a wet cell battery other than operating electrically. A parathyroid hormone is an authorizing substance allowing calcium to enter the cell. The calcium pump within a vital cell membrane has to keep a much lower level of calcium inside than outside the cell. Mitochondria and microsome is an example of life colloid that store a calcium deposit. Inside a cell, there is a specialized protein that binds calcium called Calmodulin. Calmodulin ensures calcium is where it is structurally useful within the cell. Calcium is required for all movement by the body. This includes all digestive fluid, hormone, immune cell function, and nerve conduction. An immune cell only can produce messenger protein, cytokines, with adequate levels of calcium. Cell vitality relies on calcium being only 1/10,000th on the inside to outside. All cell network requires calcium to have healthy function. This requires regulating hormone that control the metabolism of calcium. These include the parathyroid hormone, calcitonin, and the active form of vitamin D. Calcitonin produced by the thyroid gland increases calcium deposit from blood to bone. Parathyroid and active vitamin D both allow calcium to be absorbed from bone and gut, respectively, into the blood. Fish living in an environment that has an abundance of calcium is without requiring parathyroid hormone. A land-dwelling, air-breathing animal slowly, other than produces enough parathyroid hormone. Calcium in an older animal can have become way less than excellent in the older animal. And in this situation, very little calcitonin is produced by the thyroid gland. Calcium is like a sound volume control switch combined with a tuner on a radio. As the volume is turned up or down so hearing is just right, and the tuner is adjusted to the station, is coming through the speaker with beautiful clarity. Listening is clear and easily performed as everything about the radio is tuned. The sound coming through is just right, and there is other than any background noise. The radio is tuned perfectly. Calcium performs a similar control function. With excessive calcium, it is like the radio is other than tuned properly. Sound spills beyond the speaker without clarity. As there is other than enough calcium, the station on the radio is inaudible, and the tuner other than allows things broadcast to be heard with any clarity. As blood calcium is other than kept, nerve activity within the body is also other than kept, and a cannibalism of the brain and gut can have ensued. Potassium that is ordinarily kept inside the cell can have become more concentrated outside the cell than is optimal, and the electrical potential across the cell membrane other than occurs faithfully.
You have time. I want to move some stuff.
Okay.
From one driveway to another.
All right. As sodium and calcium and magnesium are other than kept in the blood plasma, a muscle and a cell can other than relax nor function properly. Blood level of calcium that is excessive turn a cell on in a manner that the cell and nerve can other than completely relax. Calcium enters into muscle and binds with contractile protein. Calcium is what allows flagella or cilia to propel primitive bacteria as spirochetes from the mud. These organisms move around quite nicely in the presence of sufficient calcium. Human sperm also. Calcium is necessary for egg and sperm to unite. Calcium entering an egg is in and of itself enough to initiate the fertilization parthenogenically. Calcium is very much required for life's beginning. As one can see, calcium is very important in having good health. Excellent health ensues as one reduces the amount of protein consumed. Excessive protein, phosphorus, sulfuric acid, and carbonic acid from body ailment newly brought in robs calcium in its neutralization. For instance, a modern sad diet of cow's milk has an excessive amount of phosphorus that a human other than requires. That phosphorus creates a negative calcium ratio in the body. Cruciferous vegetable, especially cooked up, rob calcium from the body. Starch continuously acidifies the body. A diet of cooked bean and rice or other grain will stunt a person's growth. A diet of body ailment newly brought in decreases blood calcium and causes nerve to be other than in a relaxed vital state. An abnormal calcium level decrease in the blood can have prompted a hyperirritability of a nerve. Electricity's flow across the cell membrane is consciousness. As calcium is other than sufficient, mountains can have been made out of little anthills. One can have suffered from a paranoid response without a proper level of calcium. Discomfortable muscle having cramped, tetany, is the response of a low serum calcium level. Serum calcium that's beyond what's required can have caused one to be other than feeling in a wakeful state. Excess calcium can cause one to feel way less than happy or interested in one's surroundings. Muscle strength and endurance would also other than have been kept. Those having suffered from convulsion can other than be sufficient in calcium or vitamin D. Signs and symptoms can be noted carefully to implement a true healing therapeutic. Biochemical blood tests have replaced physical indicators of the body condition, such as size and tenderness of the liver and gallbladder. Breath consistency and pulse strength and characteristic can all be read out to give an accurate assessment of one's physical condition. Some calcium in the plasma is bound to protein, and other ions remain free. As blood would have become more alkaline, ionized forms of calcium decrease, and in this condition the nerves tend to be more active than required and hypersensitized. An other than excellent level of calcium being present is responsible for the unusual excitation of nerves. Newborn babies born to mothers on a dead food diet generally show signs of low calcium. A newborn's parathyroid gland may other than secrete enough parathyroid hormone, giving the mother who is breastfeeding an adequate level of calcium and ensuring there is sunlight to stimulate vitamin D synthesis, causes the newborn's plasma calcium level to normalize in most cases. Calcium and vital immunity. A macrophage is an immune cell that digests dysbiotic bacteria, spore, virus, mold, fungus, and yeast. A lymphocyte is first alarmed by a macrophage through information molecules. Immune cells transmit signals by employing calcium. The movement of a macrophage is initiated through employing calcium. A cytoskeleton of microtubule and filament are the bones and muscles inside the cell. This cytoskeleton of the cell is what gives it shape. Calcium causes a contraction of the cytoskeleton to create cell movement. This is the very same contraction that moves cilia and flagella of life colloid as well as muscle of the body. A macrophage requires assistance from other components of the immune system to send messages like interleukin. Calcium is required for this, as is all endocrine hormones. Excessive blood sugar robs phosphorus from the body, and this causes calcium to be other than useful. Because calcium is a vital element for all endocrine function, excessive blood sugar from high glycotic dead food indirectly other than allows proper level of plasma calcium. Immune cells excrete information substances with the assistance of calcium that turn the whole immune system on or off. Some of these information molecules assist in a vital response and others suppress this vital response. Communication between cells relies on a proper sodium-potassium pump, and calcium is extremely important in this matter. Otherwise, the communication network can have become other than integrated. Sufficient calcium and vitamin D3 during Lifefood nutritional fasting and doing cell cleansing is vital for a good body house cleaning response. Calcium sufficiency leads to increased resistance to infection and proper joint, bone, and cartilage function. Rheumatoid arthritis sufferers are generally in a state of other than excellent plasma concentration of calcium. With calcium, the cells of cartilage covering bone can modify materials required in cell respiration. Otherwise, material may modify immune function. Rheumatoid arthritis sufferers have been greatly relieved of symptom clinically as vitamin D3 and gut calcium absorption is normalized. The parathyroid, under condition of calcium insufficiency, is produced in excess, and this can have continuously caused a drawing upon the bank account of bone stored calcium. Lifefood nutritional fasting and tissue cleansing shows great improvement in overall health, and this has its great effect on assisting the body heal from some ailment like arthritis. People report in such situation as arthritis that they have a great deal more comfort and ease and range of motion, and that joints are greatly normalized, anti-inflammatory, in their function. Blood filtration and calcium. Immune activation on alert at the top of the intestinal tract is called sore throat or tonsillitis. Many people present to the clinic with Streptococcus, that is a fixed non-motile bacteria on the tongue, throat, and stomach. One's immune system organizes itself to ward off this pathogen, yet there is very similar protein within the kidney glomerulus basement membrane. Urine is produced from blood as it passes through this membrane. The immune cell can have perfectly organized itself for protein of the hemolytic Streptococcus pathogen and also mistakenly tagged glomerulus basement membrane cells in the kidneys also. It is other than uncommon to find kidney immune overreaction and protein leakage into one's urine along with throat, tongue, and stomach streptococcus. Blood cells that are quite tiny and tangled in the kidney where urine is produced in the glomerulus have a tissue called mesangium. Capillary blood vessel walls also resemble mesangium, and as calcium was other than sufficient, mesangial cells can have accidentally absorbed the calcium that was being drawn from the bones. Mesangial cells have smooth muscle that their vascular walls are made of, and these cells contract as calcium would have entered. Calcium regulation plays a key role in assisting the body to heal and have its vital forces through proper blood filtration. Adequate calcium and vitamin D normalization assists those who have renal health challenge. Lifefood nutritional fasting and cell cleansing assists kidney function. Much body ailment newly brought in is removed and the blood is saved of filtering extraneous noxious debris from the body. Blood filtration is enhanced through Lifefood and eliminating all body ailment newly brought in. This excellent effect can be characterized by calcium's important homeostatic function in assisting the kidneys filter blood vitally. Heavy metal toxicity from dead food can have deposited aluminum, lead, nickel, mercury in the connective tissue of the body. This heavy metal toxicity seriously impairs calcium transport across cell membrane. Calcium assists in blood sugar regulation. Glucose entry to the cell occurs as a result of insulin's effect. Blood sugar can only be used as there is sufficient calcium. Calcium is necessary for the B cells of the Langerhans islet of the pancreas to be able to release insulin. Digestive insufficiency occurs because of the bile stone formation impeding the liver's factory irrigation sewer treatment service. Bile, other than neutralization of the acid churn of the stomach, speaks through symptoms of head aching, dizziness, hypertension, heartburn, indigestion, colon challenge, and blood sugar regulation. To this note, calcium is required. Without proper levels of calcium to run the endocrine glands, excess blood sugar leaks into the urine. That body signal is enough to note that cholesterol and lipid metabolism is facilitating arteriosclerotic plaque within blood vessels. Overeating protein is one of the primary causes of a low blood calcium level. Potassium-sodium pump sufficiency, managing calcium, stimulates pancreatic cells to produce insulin in the presence of excessive blood sugar. Glucose and calcium are keys to blood sugar stability within the blood. Lifefood nutritional fasting and cell cleansing requires little insulin, and this has a major impact both on calcium plasma normalization as well as increasing cell sensitivity to insulin. Vitamin D3 is a hormone. This hormone is manufactured in the skin from ultraviolet light's action. This precursor material is activated by the kidneys, and then the liver finally transforms this nutrient into active vitamin D. As other than any insulin is present, and as cells other than keep their sensitivity to insulin's effect, the kidneys are other than able to faithfully produce vitamin D. As vitamin D is present, calcium is absorbed from the gut. Calcium and blood vessel health. How relaxed and tonified the blood vessel walls is an important issue in relation to calcium's role in cerebral artery strength and heart muscle respiration. Arteriosclerosis and hypertension can be adequately prevented if one knew how important calcium is in being in balance. Gut calcium absorption requires vitamin D, and deficient calcium absorption from the gut can be a major factor in tensile elasticity of the artery wall. Hypertension can be brought about by having excess blood from gluttonous eating. Calcium drawn from bones is absorbed from the blood through artery walls, and this causes the blood vessel wall other than to remain dilated and open. Calcium's absorption can have been other than vital because of antagonistic influences. Phytic acid from grain and bean binding with mineral can have had in the gut, causing malabsorption of mineral. The modern diet, high in cooked sodium and poor in potassium and generally devoid of magnesium, is antagonistic to calcium remaining vital. Abundant sodium in the cell is exchanged for calcium stress release of adrenocorticotropic hormone. Aldosterone allows salt to be retained. This decreases the sodium in the urine, causing more sodium to be in the blood. Calcium can have eventually entered the cell in exchange for sodium. Excess calcium in the cell causes hypertension of the smooth muscle surrounding the arteries. Lifefood is the ancient architect's diet for a human, and this keeps calcium vital in support of vital health. Otherwise, a cannibalized brain and gut ensue from over-acidification. Potassium and cell rejuvenation. Heart action, brain function, and life processes and vital energy requirement is dependent on potassium's effect on water. Fertilizer, pesticide, and insecticide causes food grown that way to possess an incorrect ratio of potassium to sodium. Lifefood is organic and has its proper level of potassium to sodium ratio. Commercial grown produce has more sodium than potassium and also more water than Lifefood. As long as life is what ensues, potassium plays an important role. Potassium from Lifefood is absorbed by cell and is electric in nature that a cooked, dead, denatured food is devoid of. Any person having studied chemistry or physics is aware that potassium is number 19 on the periodic chart of elements. There are 18 elements lighter than potassium and close to 100 odd that are heavier and larger. Fat, protein, and sugar are huge molecules in comparison to potassium. Potassium has 19 protons, 19 electrons, and 20 neutrons. Because 19 is a magic number of stability, forming a stable electron cloud, potassium with one more proton and electron has its 19th electron out beyond its stable electron cloud. Argon with 18 proton and 18 electron is an inert element. Little energy is required for potassium from Lifefood to have other than kept its outer electron beyond its stable electron cloud. Potassium is fast to bond to another element. Let's find out in a moment what is so important to a Lifefooder about this information. Yet first, let's take a look at another element in this equation that has equal importance as potassium and plays an important role also in vitality. Sodium has very similar properties with 11 proton and electron. This number also is one above another magic number. Neon, having 10 proton and 10 electron, is an inert element. Sodium, being with one electron out beyond its stable electron cloud, is like potassium, highly reactive to join with other element. Electrical conduction occurs in the body as a result of potassium and sodium's covalent electron. Solo outer electron rove from atom to atom. A solution that has potassium and calcium dissolved is called an electrolyte solution. It is this electrolyte solution that conducts electricity in the body. Some elements that have an odd electron are potassium, sodium, and chlorine, 17 electron. Chlorine loves to accept an electron, and potassium and sodium love to give one up. Atoms that have gained or lost a spare electron are called ions. Positive and negative charged ions are attracted to each other. The membranes regulate what goes into and out of the cell of the body and can be only about 2 molecules thick. One function of the cell membrane is to keep potassium on the inside of the cell and sodium on the outside. 1/3 of all energy requirements goes to support this vital process. Proteins in the cell membrane facilitate this process, called the sodium-potassium pump. Chemical energy is required to exchange 2 atoms of potassium outside the cell for 3 sodium ions inside. As the membrane proteins do this work, there can eventually be a significant electrically lower positive charge inside than outside because of this natural 2-for-3 exchange. The cell membrane is much more sensitive to potassium. Once sodium is expelled, it stays out. Potassium, though, remains attracted to the cell membrane. A cell's interior is at the bottom of the hill for potassium. A positive charge coming into the cell reduces its interior negative charge. Electrical attraction, along with the concentration gradient, affects the diffusion into and out of the cell of atoms charged as ions. As potassium is concentrated inside the cell and outside the cell is modest in comparison, the inside of the cell becomes the top of the hill. Potassium rolls downhill sometimes and into and sometimes out from the cell until all equilibrium is reached by the sodium-potassium pump. This results from the concentration gradient and the electrical potential being in balance. This balance is reached as there is an abundance of potassium inside and sodium is abundantly outside the cell membrane. Potassium is 40 to 1 inside to outside the cell membrane. Potassium is very much on the inside of the cell, and sodium is quite abundant more outside of the cell membrane. Calcium is an important mineral in regulating the sodium-potassium pump. Too much calcium internally, and the cell is other than able to relax. As calcium ions would have become more concentrated outside, it is like moving calcium uphill for the cell, and that would require energy. Calcium has a charge of 2 because 2 electrons like to depart from calcium as it is dissolved in solution. An enormous amount of energy is required to get calcium out of the cell. The energy for this removal is equivalent to 2 potassium ions. A cell membrane on the outside attracts 3 sodium ions and exchanges this for 1 calcium ion. Sodium entering the cell requires a release of electrical energy. This is energy beyond the energy required to exchange calcium to be outside the cell membrane. The body, figuratively, has to push calcium uphill, and it does this with the exchange of 3 sodium ions. The spare energy overcomes the concentration gradient. While the body has potassium in the plasma, between cells allows cell membranes to generate electrical current across the cell wall boundary. This in turn sensitizes the membrane's capacity to clear sodium from the interior milieu of the cell. Sodium can have other than remained on the outside of the cell and potassium on the inside on a dead food diet. For sodium's removal from the inside, it takes potassium to be present on the outside. As sodium is removed perfectly during Lifefood nutritional fasting, the voltage difference of the cell membrane remains. Calcium's ability to be managed is excellent during Lifefood nutritional fasting as a result of having the proper voltage across the cell membrane. Youthing is having enough potassium and this vitality. Lifefood is an abundance of potassium in a form where it is in its undenatured state. Lifefood nutritional fasting allows potassium ions to be abundantly available to remove sodium from inside the cell to restore chemical balance and electrical valence of the cell. Lifefood is high potassium food and low sodium in comparison. Potassium-rich nutrient assists the body with cell cleansing. By having enough potassium, calcium can be removed from muscle cells of the body, enabling them to be able to relax. As cellular calcium is in the right ratio and there is just the right amount of potassium, Lifefood supplies this ratio, this perfect ratio, muscle of the cardiovascular system can relax. Artery dilates and allows more blood through. The heart's regulatory role is made easier. Relaxed artery allows rhythmic blood flow. Calcium that is cellular is naturally complexed in Lifefood. It has a proper ratio of calcium to phosphorus, 2.5 calcium to 1 phosphorus. Calcium coming from Lifefood that's grown toward the sunlight is more anionic. Calcium coming from food grown away from sunlight is more cationic in nature. Anionic calcium is good for vitalizing the liver, and cationic calcium is good for vitalizing the upper stomach. If there was a burden of extra sodium in the blood because of past consumed cooked poisonous salt, calcium can have been high in the muscle cell of artery. Having enough potassium and a modest amount of sodium and the amount of calcium in the muscle cells is likely to be as nature intended. Humans have evolved a digestive tract from eons as a result of habit. Lifefood is the perfect food, having an abundance of potassium, a modest amount of sodium, and electric biological forms of calcium in an excellent ratio of 2.5 to 1 with phosphorus. Potassium is easier to remove from the body than sodium or calcium. Sun-dried sea salt with its large cachet of mineral can be biologically transmutated into any mineral needed by the body. Dietary potassium sufficiency moderates excessive dead contamination in the body. Blood serum potassium levels should be between 3.5 and 4.5 milliliters to deciliter. Athletes in their prime can have suddenly keeled over from a heart attack and died. Coaches and onlookers amazed at how someone's body can have looked so good, yet was unable to manage the electrics. In an athlete, excellent potassium level keeps potassium inside the cell. In fatigue, as the muscle was other than rested, potassium is released into the extracellular fluid around these cells. As the electromotive force across the cell membrane is maintained, potassium is kept inside the cell. Otherwise, transport of calcium out other than occurs, and the cell would have been unable to relax nicely. Calcium electrically enters the cell easily, yet it requires 3 sodium ions to be removed without adequate levels of potassium, as in a sad diet. Cells may other than be able to relax. Voltage across fatigued muscle tissue cell membranes can have dropped by 50%. As muscular tension ceases, potassium can slowly return to the interior of the cell. It is the sodium-potassium pump that assists in removing excess calcium. Muscle tissue is the major reservoir of potassium. Muscle cell membrane is the site of exercise-induced fitness. Potassium fitness increases with training. Potassium assists with adrenal function through immunomodulators are only present in the body as the sodium-potassium pump is working nicely in the adrenal glands. Potassium feedback allows the kidney to produce renin that is important in regulating calcium. Modest levels of sodium and adequate levels of potassium assist in adrenal regulation. Electrolytes other than being kept is often a symptom of heavy metal toxicity. Methylmercury, cadmium, lead, mercury, nickel, silver all inhibit the sodium-potassium pump. Potassium is other than kept in the body as there would have been nickel and lead contamination. Using is maintaining enzyme activity of the sodium-potassium pump. Serum adequacy of potassium assists with human growth hormone release. The permeability of cell potassium is often other than kept as one other than remains vital. Adequate levels of blood serum potassium influences bronchioles and alveoli of the lung to remain open and vital. Muscle strength and exercise endurance is assisted as there is enough blood serum potassium. Cells sufficiently electrically charged can ward off disease. Potassium is connected to sugar metabolism, insulin production, and lowers a diabetic's blood sugar. The sodium-potassium pump is vital in a cell membrane being permeable to insulin and blood sugar. Weight loss on a harmful diet reduction program can have other than kept the serum level of enzymes necessary for the sodium-potassium pump to function vitally. Glucose and insulin sensitivity occur in a balanced electrolyte terrain. Metabolic equilibrium of electrolytes protects the inner ear to maintain hearing vitality. The fluid in the endolymph membranous labyrinth of the ears has a major amount of potassium. Sodium primarily found in the perilymph between bone and labyrinth membranes of the ear. Perilymph requires the proper concentration of potassium, otherwise there can be a progressive condition of where hair cells are other than being kept. Hearing relies upon proper ratio of cell membrane sodium-potassium concentration to work efficiently. Otherwise, the first sense to be other than kept is one's hearing. Dietary sodium-potassium ratio being kept optimal has a major influence keeping neoplastic cells at bay. Low dietary sodium in relation to potassium is a significant cancer protective factor. Potassium is important for sperm motility and female fertility. Walking through the bush, picking berries here and there is other than any need to be concerned about excess sodium and low potassium in the SAD diet. Lifefood is the ancient architect's diet for humans. Cofactors must be present for potassium to be absorbed. Pasteurization and denaturing food destroys these potassium-absorbing cofactors.